Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into something that honestly affects so many of us and we don't even realize it. We're talking about those hidden family patterns that just seem to keep us stuck. We're going to uncover why this happens and, most importantly, how we can finally break free. So, let me ask you this. Ever feel like you're living in your own personal Groundhog Day? Repeating the same financial struggles no matter how hard you work. Or maybe you keep finding yourself in the exact same kind of relationship with the exact same problems over and over again. It feels like you're just stuck in this loop, right? Well, what if I told you the answer to why this happens doesn't really start with your choices or your willpower, but with your biology? Yeah. The first clue is hidden in a really fascinating corner of neuroscience, and it all starts with a beautiful and very sensitive flower. Okay, so there's this incredible research from Dr. Thomas Boyce, and he found that basically humanity can be split into two groups based on how sensitive we are biologically. You can see it right here on the chart. About 80% of us are what he calls dandelion children. They're resilient, they can thrive pretty much anywhere. But that other 20%, that's a crucial group he calls orchid children. So what exactly is an orchid child? Well, think of someone whose nervous system is tuned like a super sensitive biological radar. It just picks up on everything. Now, this makes them incredibly perceptive and intuitive, but it also means they are deeply physically affected by their environment, especially the unspoken stress and emotions floating around in their family. This really lays out the difference, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the steady, resilient dandelion, and on the other, the orchid. Now, here's the thing. In a supportive, loving environment, orchids don't just survive. They absolutely flourish. They can become these incredibly creative, brilliant people. But in a stressful home, they can really wither. So the key takeaway here isn't about weakness. Not at all. It's about a high level of receptivity. Okay, so if 1 in 5 of us are these emotional sponges, what exactly are they absorbing? Well, this is where we get into the ghosts of the family's past and how pain actually gets transmitted from one generation to the next. And we're not just talking about learned behaviors, like picking up a bad habit. No, this research describes these inherited emotions as trapped vital energies. Think about the unspoken tension in a room. You know that feeling. Imagine your parents' quiet regret or their constant anxiety about money. A highly sensitive child doesn't just see that stuff. They absorb it right into their own developing nervous system. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you, as an adult, finally decide to change your life, to break that pattern, to be happier or more successful than your family was, all that stored energy, it has to go somewhere. It starts to move. It flows through these old neural pathways, which this research calls rusty pipes. That sudden, out-of-nowhere anxiety you feel, that weird physical pain that has no explanation, that can literally be the feeling of this old energy finally getting flushed out of your system. The legendary psychologist Karl Jung just nailed it with this quote. The dreams your parents couldn't follow, the potential they never got to realize, that energy doesn't just vanish. It becomes this invisible weight, an emotional inheritance that you might be carrying around without even realizing it's not yours to carry. Which brings us to the absolute core of this mystery. We've seen what's happening and how it's passed down, but now we need to uncover the motive. Why would we unconsciously hold on to all this pain? The answer is pretty shocking. It lies in something called hidden loyalties. I mean, it's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If these patterns of struggle and heartbreak cause us so much pain, why in the world would we keep repeating them? It just feels completely illogical, like a deep form of self-sabotage. But our unconscious mind has its own logic, and it is incredibly powerful. The research really boils it down to these 4 main hidden loyalties. First up, belonging. Deep down, there's a primal fear that if you stop suffering in the same way your family does, you won't belong anymore. Next is mastery. You unconsciously recreate a painful situation, hoping that this time you can finally fix it, you can finally win. Then there's familiarity. It sounds crazy, but your nervous system might actually prefer the pain it knows over the terrifying uncertainty of success. And last, sacrifice. This is a kind of blind, childlike love where you try to take on your parents' burden to somehow make their pain less. And let's make this real. Imagine you grew up in a family that always struggled with money. If you start to become really successful on some deep, unconscious level, that can feel like a betrayal. You're leaving them behind.
you're breaking the unspoken family code, and so you might find ways to sabotage your own success just to maintain that loyalty, just to stay one of them.
But here's the most important part of this whole story. We are not doomed to repeat these patterns forever. Now that we understand the problem, we can finally turn to the solution. And it's a process that's almost magical, called psychological alchemy. It is the path to freedom. You know, alchemy was that ancient mystical practice of turning lead into gold. The metaphor here is absolutely perfect. We are taking the heavy, dense psychological lead of our family's pain and our inherited wounds, and through the power of our own awareness, we transform it into the consciousness gold of true freedom and choice. Just look at this shift. It's moving from a life that feels like it's just your fate, like you're living a story someone else wrote for you, to a life of personal freedom, where you are the author. It's going from unconscious repetition to making conscious choices, and the fuel for that entire transformation is self-awareness. And there's Jung again, with the absolute key to everything. That pattern you thought was just bad luck or your fate? Nope, it's just an unconscious loyalty playing itself out. The moment you bring it into the light of your awareness, the moment you can name it and say, that's what that is, it starts to lose its power over you. That right there is the first and most powerful step. So the path forward is actually pretty clear. Step 1, awareness. See the pattern for what it is. It's a loyalty, it's not your identity. Step 2, create safety. Now this might mean putting some physical distance between you and a source of stress, or it could just mean creating stronger emotional boundaries to protect your system. And then step 3, flourish. Because in this new, safe environment, the science of epigenetics actually shows that your genes can begin to express themselves differently. That sensitive orchid can finally, truly bloom. All right, let's bring this all home. This whole journey, it's not just about feeling a little bit better. It's about a massive, fundamental shift from a feeling of entrapment to a feeling of sovereignty. It's about finally, truly rewriting your own story. And listen, as you start to change, you are going to feel fear. It can be this intense, deep, existential dread. It is so important to understand this, that fear is not a stop sign. It is not telling you that you're doing something wrong. That fear is the feeling of your identity successfully separating from the collective family pain. It's actually a sign of progress. And the work you're doing, it's profound. This isn't just for you. When you heal an inherited trauma, when you're the one who breaks a generational pattern of poverty or heartbreak, you are performing a purifying act for everyone who came before you and for everyone who will come after you. You are stopping the pain with you. So I'll leave you with this one question. Take a look at your life, at the patterns, at the loops. You have the map now. You understand the hidden loyalties. You hold the power of awareness. So what inherited story will you choose to rewrite? The pen is in your hand.